if not for Alex Stalock, who, let's be honest, if there's a most valuable player on one of the worst teams in hockey, he might be the guy. When he's been healthy, he has been terrific.
Yeah, he's been great. I mean, we talked about it. Thank you, Nathan, for the shout out to the haircut. We talked about it before this season and made the joke like, hey, those tank games against the Coyotes and whatnot, those are your Stalock games, and he's been completely the opposite this season. He's been the best goalie that they've had outside of the legend of Jackson Stauber. But yeah, I mean, a great game from him tonight. We had the full experience again, which sign me up for next season. Like I'm all for it. But yeah, a really good performance from him without the way that he played in that second. I know he gave up the 4 goals, but like on 41 shots, like you can only do so much. So without him in that second period, it would have been out of reach at that point. But yeah, I mean a really good game for him. He's definitely playing his way into another year or 2 of NHL jobs if he wants them, either here or next season. Like he is playing well enough to where, if he does go to the free agency market, teams are going to look at, the roster he played behind,
right,
and say, hey, you still put up these kinds of numbers, like we'll give you a job. Like, hey, Edmonton, we'll take you back.
Yeah, and he's just such an awesome dude to have in your locker room.
Yeah.
That's why, like, as you mentioned in the off season, we were joking, put Stalock in for those tank games, and now we're literally like, oh no, Stalock's too good. We can't have him out there.
Yeah.
But as much as we talk about tanks and we can't win these many games, any success Alex Stalock has, even if it goes against the tank standings, I'm happy for it because this guy's been through so much.
Yeah.
And he is. Like, it's not – when you hear Luke Richardson or other guys in the locker room talk about him, they're not just blowing smoke. Like, we've been lucky enough to have the opportunity to talk to him numerous times this year and just see him interact with his teammates at practice, in the locker room. He is a good locker room guy and a solid – just a solid human being. So to see a guy that's gone through so much of those health problems, lost an entire year – to health issues, and then this year had to be scary to be a goaltender that all of a sudden can't track the puck because you're having an ocular problem.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the most important thing. It's got to be scary. I mean, he even said that like he had to spend days where he literally had to lie on the couch and couldn't play with his kids, like, and that just made him question everything.
Yeah.
And to have that kind of mental anguish and then to come back, play for a really bad hockey team, but not because of you. Good for him.
Yeah, well, I think, too, like, a guy like that who's been through something like that, who is such a veteran, having that kind of perspective in the locker room, I think, can be valuable, too, whereas, losses start piling up and guys start getting frustrated and, Alex Stalock says, look, man, this is not life or death. I had a life or death situation last year with the myocarditis, and I've gone through myriad concussions and the ocular problem you mentioned. Like, it's just a game. Everything's going to be fine. Like, we still got our families. We still, have our livelihoods about us. At the end of the day, we're playing a game for a living. And I think sometimes when things get really, really bad, and there's only been a couple points this year where you were like, holy cow, you really got to be careful about losing a team here.
Yeah.
I think having a guy with that kind of experience, and just his personality in general is positive, and it's a different room when he's in there. Even when we go in there, when Stalock's there, it's a different feel. It's a lot looser. Yeah. People are laughing. It's louder. It's just a totally different atmosphere with him there. And I think aside from how well he's playing on the ice, everything he brings off ice is really valuable. And I wouldn't totally shock me to see the Hawks bring him back. I'm not sure what their plans are with Soderblom next year, but I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on what happens with Comesso, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that kind of have to go. I don't know. There's a lot of ways it can go, but I would love to see him come back one way or another.
Yeah.
And our guy Michael was asking, why didn't anybody look at Stalock at the deadline? couple of reasons.
He was hurt.
First, he was just coming back from, that ocular problem, so I don't think anybody was ready to staple their playoff hopes to a guy that may or may not be able to see the puck.
Yeah.
And it was pretty dead goalie market
not a ton.
outside of the surprising
Jonathan Quick scenario,
trade, where the Kings upgraded their goaltending by getting Korpisalo, maybe. There was really
marginal increase.
There wasn't much of a goalie market out there this trade deadline, which is rare. I brought that up during our trade deadline show. Like, there wasn't a lot of goalies being moved, which it's sometimes, guys like the teams like to at least shore up their backup goalie going down the stretch.
Yeah.
But had Stalock not suffered that second injury, I bet there would have been a couple of phone calls possibly, for him. But, that could have been one of those situations where even if there was a phone call, Kyle Davidson would have been like, unless you're going to blow me away, I'm not going to trade him just to trade him.
Yeah.
He's been good for us. He's got his young family here. It's just not worth it, unless it's something he wants to do.
Well, and plus, everything he's been through, the last thing that guy needs is a trade too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Uprooting the family again, moving again. It becomes a lot. And I think that's something where, some of the stuff that maybe fans don't think about. I saw somebody on Twitter today talking about like how uprooting a trade can be. I forget exactly who it was. But there's a lot of stuff you don't think about, like the change of routine. But I think especially for Stalock, the family deal and the health stuff, I think it was wise for Kyle Davidson, even if he had been healthy, to just say, we're just going to hang on to this guy, let him play the whole year here.
It's not worth a fourth or fifth round pick that you're going to get from him.
Yeah.
And Stalock's kids are at the games all the time. I see them all the time after games. So obviously, very tight, close family situation there, and you don't want to, necessarily pick those guys, move your family or be separated from your family to be a backup goalie in Pittsburgh for 3 months. It doesn't, for 6 weeks, whatever it is, doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and Stalock was part of that group of players that Kyle Davidson brought in to. Part of the reason that they were here is to keep the locker room together going through a season that's like this. Guys that have positive attitudes that can keep things light when things aren't going well in the win-loss columns. Guys like Jack Johnson, Max Domi, like they were part of that group as well. And so when those guys are traded out, probably, not giving up Stalock and not giving up that presence in the locker room for the final 21 games of the year, that was probably more worth it to keep him in Kyle Davidson's eyes to kind of help the locker room stay a little bit more, engaged and stay loose for the final 20 games than it was to get a 5th round pick or whatever it would have been the price for him.